This is a session I've really been looking forward to, actually, because ESG issues have suddenly exploded. A number of press releases I got in the run-up to COP26 by law firms burnishing their environmental credibility was quite something to behold. But the people on this panel are ahead of the game, I think, when it comes to these issues, and none more so than Bates Wells, who, I can't remember when you were here talking about what you were doing. It was a few years ago, and you've stayed ahead of the game. I think it's fair, or ahead of the market, I think it's fair to say. So, Martin, if you could outline the many things you've been doing at Bates Wells.
Good afternoon. I'm Martin Bunch. I feel very privileged to say that I'm the managing partner of Bates Wells. We are a commercial UK law firm, ranked in the top 100 law firms. We're also ranked as a leading firm advising the not-for-profit sector and charities. We're 50 years old and purpose-driven. We always have been. As Neil said, I was speaking here about purpose and being purpose-driven probably nearly 10 years ago, and was seen as a bit of a nutter in those days for leading the firm in that direction. I think we could be described as a professional services firm that combines profit with care for the planet and a strong social purpose. We were the first law firm to certify as a B Corp in the UK back in 2015. What is a B Corp? The B Corp movement started in the States some time ago. It's a certification process where you certify that your business is one that can do profit with purpose. It's for businesses really that want to use their business as a force for good. It's like fair trade for coffee, I suppose. There's about 500 B Corps in the UK now. About 4,000 across the world. There's many other law firms actually around the world. There's only 3 in the UK now, one certified this year. Some of the more well-known names you'll know as B Corps in the UK, Coutts Bank have just become a B Corp, The Guardian, Body Shop. Around the world it's Danone, one of the bigger ones who've put a lot of their products as a B Corp. Ben & Jerry's, Patagonia. It's a bit of a community that's trying to drive business in a different direction. There is a rigorous certification process to become a B Corp. It looks at all aspects of your business, and you get a points at the end of it. And it's run by a charity called B Lab, which certifies all the companies that apply, and they get many, many applies. And during the lockdown process, we had the most applications to become B Corps from across the spectrum of the economy in the UK. It's really about a triple bottom line. You'll hear about the triple bottom line, but this is what the B Corp movement is all about. It's profit, planet, and people. And that's what the business model is all about. B corporations have to have in their articles, because most of them are, it's a for-profit certification, so you have to be a business for profit, and you have to change your articles so that you commit to making a material positive impact on society and the environment. As a law firm, that's more tricky because we have an LLP deed, of course, and we had to put that commitment into our LLP deed so that all of the partners sign up to that, and that, of course, is where some law firms fall down because they don't get that commitment from all of the partners. So, as a B Corp, what are the practical things that we do or have done to make us more sustainable and inclusive? It's really in 2 areas we've concentrated on, the environment and EDI, which I know is talked about a lot at the moment. In 2019, we recognised the climate emergency and publicly made some commitments about what we would do as a firm for the climate emergency. Practical steps in our business include zero waste to landfill. We recycle everything, including just about everything that we use in the firm. We've massively reduced single-use plastic, and we offer now a sustainable pension fund as part of our work pension scheme, which actually is the most impactful action that you can take as a firm in terms of the climate action. We also encourage our people to be more environmentally conscious. We help them switch energy suppliers, which of course recently has been a major issue for them. And we also offer the Climate Perks travel scheme, which is where they get more holiday if they don't fly to their destination, so that you get more holiday if you use other transport. We're also using the law to address climate change and other business issues. You may see in the Financial Times today a letter about the Better Business Act. This is an act which we helped draft, which is going to the government now and is in Parliament, which is about making, which will require all companies in the future, if it's passed, to make sure that the interests of their shareholders does actually align with the interests of both wider society and the environment. It's for the lawyers, it's Section 127, which is about being changed, which has put the primacy of shareholders at the front of everything. But this would require actually companies to consider other stakeholders as well, which is really part of the B Corp movement. On EDI, we're working to increase diversity and inclusion in our firm and across society. The law isn't the greatest example of diversity and inclusion. It's making better steps now, and we've been trying to move that forward on a number of fronts. We've signed up to the HALO Code, the Law Society's Diversity and Inclusion Charter, which actually is a very good charter, and the Race of Work Charter as well. Some of our more senior leaders have now started a upward mentoring scheme, including me, with our black colleagues, and it is really an instructive and inspiring process, actually. We're also committed to social mobility. As we know, the law needs better social mobility in it, and we've worked with the Sutton Trust and a number of local schools to try and achieve that and support their aims. We've also used rare recruitment in our recruitment processes for lawyers, because it takes away the privilege that many of the lawyers have when they come to try and join in the law. As a B Corp and as a sort of business with purpose, there are real commercial advantages, I think, for this model. First of all, clients. Both private, public and non-profit sector clients are looking for ethically driven suppliers now. They always ask, on most tenders you're asked about what your commitments are. And other purpose-driven companies want advisors that think in similar ways. A health warning on that, you will look at many, many websites of law firms that talk about purpose now. And people know whether they're just words or whether they're actually authentic and whether they mean them. On recruitment, millennials and younger generations want to work for companies whose values they respect and again are authentic. The amount of times that I said it on the trainee interviews at our firm, and the trainees they love the fact that we're a B Corp, and they're really very, very interested in the whole purpose-driven business. It adds culture of shared values, a good place to work, and real value internally to what you're doing. It also distinguishes us from other law firms, although I do encourage other law firms to look at this sort of approach. The B Corp model requires continuous improvement, and therefore it gives us a framework to always be looking at ourselves, because you have to recertify every 3 years. And therefore you're always looking at what you're doing, your policies, your clients, what else you're doing externally. And so you're always trying to improve. But also externally, it gives us an easy message for people to understand who we are. Well, there are challenges. Obviously, there are challenges. Any program of change in a law firm, especially, has to be led from the top. And without senior buy-in, it would simply be words. And I think in many cases it often is. It needs to be front and center of a firm's values and in your strategy, in your business plans, and in your personal objectives, so that actually you are doing stuff rather than just talking about it. My partners at Bates Wells are happy to invest in our climate program. in suppliers, not the cheapest suppliers, in putting their people's financial security first rather than their own remuneration, which came to the fore during the pandemic, in supporting our charitable foundation, the Bates Wells Foundation, and in accepting that we don't work for some clients. But being sustainable and inclusive costs both time and money. By taking these steps, you will never be maximizing profit. You will be balancing profit with social and environmental gain, so you need to be sure that your firm really wants to embark on this journey and it isn't just words. The challenge is that I think it is a hard sell for traditional firms that want to just maximize profit, and that's their main goal. I think it's a tricky question about clients, about being able to turn down some clients and agree amongst your partners and the firm that you won't act for some clients. It needs leadership and long-term interest. There's the leaders we have examples of Danone and Grant Thornton in this country, where the leaders were ousted because the partners preferred to follow the profits rather than this route. And it requires resource, effort, and transparent communication, and that's something that I've found needs to be very clear. You need to be transparent and you need to communicate. Personally, I think it makes business more attractive and enjoyable, and it's also easy to be proud of what you do. We recently acted for the Uber drivers in the Supreme Court on a pro bono basis, and we acted for them all the way through that litigation. And when you're able to tell your family what you do and that you've changed the lives of all of these Uber drivers, and also many in the gig economy, it's easy then to be proud of your firm and what you're doing. I think it is also the way the world is going. I think the business needs to look at itself and it needs to actually look at what the purpose is. It's not just about the old form of capitalism may not last. And I think just these things this is the way that the business will be done in the future. And I think law firms need to understand that if they're going to survive and be sustainable. Thank you.
Sorry, Mark, can I just ask a couple of specific questions? How is this side of your operations reflected in staff appraisals?
Well, with the partners, they are all asked about it. It's something about how they have promoted our values or done the work in it. It's something that, I think we have over 110 trusteeships and governorships. It attracts people to do those sort of things, and we expect people to join in and do other things other than just the work. And people seem to enjoy that. They like getting involved. Sometimes they get over-involved in those things, but people want to be involved, and they like doing the stuff that the non-legal work.
And I'm particularly fascinated by this issue of deciding not to work for particular types of clients.
Yeah.
Which is, we had a story recently about an unnamed London firm that allows associates not to work for certain clients, but doesn't mean the firm doesn't take them, but it just allows.
Yeah. We have that as well, actually.
How do you? Who polices that group?
We have a group. We have a reputational risk group, which and if a client comes in that we feel won't even sit with our values or sit with our ethos, then it goes to that group and the research is done, and the partner who wants to act for them will come to that group and explain why they want to do it, and there will be a decision made about whether we do want to work for it or not.
But if you decide you do, but there's an associate who says, I don't feel comfortable with this, then
they're allowed not to work on that case, yeah. It doesn't happen very often, actually, but it has happened in the past. Very occasionally, but we have turned down, we probably meet, I would say, twice a month as a group, and we turn down quite a lot of people.
Yeah. Can't imagine many law firms doing that. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, on to another firm that does these things in a slightly different way, Florence.
Thank you. So I'm Florence Brocklesby. I'm the founder of Bellevue Law. Am I near enough to the microphone?
Can you hear? Yeah, everyone here.
Thank you. I'm the founder of Bellevue Law, which is a boutique firm, a baby compared to Bates Wells. It's 8 years old. It'll be 8 years old in January. And I founded Bellevue Law to offer ex-city lawyers completely flexible working, and then clients the benefit of those ex-city lawyers support cost effectively. As you might expect from a firm that puts flexible working at its core, 90% of our lawyers are female. All of our lawyers have got caring responsibilities, and everyone in the team, from the support staff to me, works flexibly. I set the firm up after 5 years out of legal practice with small children, and several of our team are returners as well. That's not been a barrier to both the team and the individual lawyers being ranked in chambers and the Legal 500 and building from scratch a client base that includes multinational businesses. But it was fundamental to me from the outset that responsible business would be at the core of what Bellevue Law did. It's been very important to me throughout my legal career, starting from taking a sabbatical when I qualified 21 years ago to work on death row cases, to running pro bono schemes for very large firms, Freshfields and Debevoise, before I started Bellevue Law. And my current fee-earning practice focuses on discrimination, mostly for women in professional services. So I think it's fair to say that I have a particular insight into how some law firms are not doing good business when it comes to treating their people fairly. We were just talking earlier about it's a very niche practice working for female lawyers, but it's surprising how much of that work, surprising and sad how much of that work there still is in this day and age. And fundamentally, I think it aligns with what Martin was saying. This is my first and most important point, is it's really interesting to hear about these schemes, B Corp, Good Business Charter, Circulytics, and I'm delighted to have people listening to what the firm's journeys have been towards accreditation. I support them completely wholeheartedly, but they are as nothing compared to the culture and the values of the firm. I cannot tell you how many female lawyers I've represented who work for firms who've got the most immaculate diversity policies. They've got whole teams responsible for diversity and inclusion. They've got pictures of smiling women in power suits all over their websites. But in practice, they will tolerate and are prepared to pay off shocking harassment and discrimination. The same can be said about greenwashing. In the light of COP26, you'll have had a lot of press releases about the wonderful things firms are doing in relation to the environment, but you have to dig beneath that and see whether it's really at the core of what they do, and as Martin said, whether they're prepared to put their money where their mouth is. And the Great Resignation shows us just how many employees don't really feel valued and fairly treated by their employers. So I'm hoping that this will take me to a slide which talks about various components of the Good Business Charter. It's a relatively new scheme, launched with terrible timing in February 2020, and its aim is to encourage and recognise responsible business behaviour. Its founder members included Brompton Bicycles, Capita, Deloitte and Richer Sounds, and it now has 702 accredited businesses, including Aviva, Schroders Personal Wealth, St James's Place and TSB. Amongst law firms, we were the first law firm to sign up, and now I think there are 13 in the legal sector, including Bates Wells, alongside its B Corp membership, also Eversheds, and several smaller firms like Bellevue Law. It's very much a lighter touch than B Corp accreditation, and Good Business Charter accreditation might be a stepping stone towards that, or for a smaller firm, it just might be a suitable fit. If you don't have a CSR team, you don't have the dedicated resource to manage what, as Martin's described, is a very rigorous accreditation process for B Corp. For us, at Bellevue Law, it will be a stepping stone towards B Corp certification because we're committed to doing that despite the resources that are required, but obviously that isn't going to be for everyone. So we joined the Good Business Charter back in early 2020, and what is necessary is to comply with all 10 of the components that they require. I've got them all here, but I'm not going to take through every single one. The first 5 all relate to how a firm treats its people. So in practice, if you're a decent employer in the first place, it's mostly about confirming and documenting your practices. So for example, we had to be accredited, we had to sign up to pay the real living wage, and we had to become members of the Living Wage Foundation, which we weren't previously. However, we were already paying our people at above the real living wage, so the cost of the business of doing that was really quite minimal. It was a small amount of administration and a membership fee. The living wage has just been, the next living wage has just been announced. It's going to be £11.05 in London and £9.90 outside. And if you can't afford to pay that, you have to question whether your business is very good commercially as well as ethically. There's nothing in here that looks at fairer hours and contracts. There's a concern there around 0 hours contracts. So we have a lot of consultant lawyers who are technically working in a way on 0 hours contracts. Nobody's crying over what they're paid. And so long as you can explain that you have a business process that works for the team member and the firm, then there's no issue there. It's looking to catch those sort of unethical 0 hour contracts. There are criteria around employee well-being and representation, and also around diversity and inclusion. It is important that you can fulfill all of the criteria, but they are criteria that, in my view, you should not be finding too rigorous. There will be things you may need to change. It may be about documentation, it may be about processes, and there may be some substantive changes, but it is not about turning your business upside down unless your business model is not at all ethical. The next one is environmental impact, and in some ways for us, this was the most challenging, not because we aren't committed to it, but actually because as a smaller firm, like maybe some of the firms that are represented here today, it's not something we were measuring. So an example of that would be that our office energy consumption is included in our rent, whereas if we were a much bigger practice, we might have much more granular data about that, and therefore we would be able to measure what our footprint was at the start of the process, what measures we put in place, and what impact that had more easily than we are able to do, because I just pay the same rent whether or not we turn the lights off. It doesn't matter, there are ways around it. We can still turn the lights off, and in practice, it's something that we already felt strongly about, and it just was a tool which helped us to tighten up on things like energy efficiency, recycling, and travel, and the pandemic has also helped us to tighten up on the latter of those, which is probably one of the major environmental black spots for law firms, or was pre-pandemic. We had to make a commitment to paying fair tax. It's not probably too challenging compared to maybe some of the people who spoke before from hedge funds. It's probably not too challenging for law firms just because of the legal structures. So, we already pay our tax, and we have to include some wording in our accounts just to confirm that we're not going to try and wriggle out of it, and I don't have any difficulty with that. We have to treat our clients fairly and collect feedback. And again, this is something that we do anyway for our own purposes. We have an annual client survey, and I guess other firms might take feedback at the end of the matter. So if you are a firm that isn't already doing that, that would be a change. But I think it would be one that would benefit the firm more than it would benefit the clients. Need to look to your supply chain and ensure that that is ethical. And again, in the legal sector, I think it's less of an issue than in others, but as Martin says, it could be a question sometimes choosing the better supplier rather than the cheaper supplier, around, for example, energy. And then the final one, which I think is something that has become more prominent, or something people have become more aware of in the last 18 months, is prompt payment. So you're required to sign up to the prompt payment code and to pay your suppliers promptly. I am a goody two-shoes, and we pay our bills on receipt, so there is no issue for us in doing that, and it was just an administrative thing of signing up to the code. But there may be businesses that would have more of an issue with that, would find it more challenging, and perhaps in the last 18 months, in all good faith, it may have been even more challenging. But probably what the last 18 months has shown us is that actually paying your suppliers is an ethical as well as a commercial and a legal issue. So we've been members now for 18 months. It's been an entirely positive experience for us. I think it is fair to say that no business, in my experience, no business that considers itself to be responsible and ethical would have any issue with signing up and making whatever changes were required to be accredited by the Good Business Charter. The investment of management time, administration and costs is entirely proportionate to what's measured and how it's measured. The next step for us will definitely be B Corp accreditation, and it is a very, very big step for a small firm. We're happy to take it, but it won't be for every smaller firm. It won't be for every boutique firm. It would be great to see some kind of halfway house between the Good Business Charter and B Corp, so that firms could ratchet up their commitment in what might be a more manageable, less daunting way. Benefits of it, the main benefit, I suspect, is recognition as a responsible business, but to be honest, if that is the reason that you're doing it, it's probably not worth bothering. If your motivation for joining any of these schemes is recognition, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and it's quite likely that the impact will be less, and it's also quite likely that that will be visibly the case. People will recognise it, and we've all seen these statements that big businesses make about their sustainability and their commitment to diversity. As lawyers who see behind those businesses, we maybe become a little bit cynical about what that means. So there's really, as Martin said, the reason to do it is because you really want to do better, not because you want to be seen to do better. Fundamentally, I think the approach to doing business ethically is always going to have to be values driven, and in all sectors. There are businesses that look to the short-term bottom line, and there are businesses that genuinely want to do business well and see no harm. And I would go further, and I would say they see the benefit to themselves in behaving well. For those kind of firms, which are probably the firms of the future, as Martin said, the Good Business Charter is a really great starting point to improve your positive impact and to demonstrate it. It's such a delight to be here today with so many innovative firms. And as you see the legal industry evolving, becoming more diverse, less conservative, I think it would be wonderful if joining schemes like this became seen as really just a standard part of running a good business.
I have to say, as a small business that supplies the legal industry, prompt payment would be great. I could think one particular large law firm that use our webinars. This firm is not short of money, and even despite the COVID, and they supposedly put their entire account staff, that's what they told us, on furlough for months last year, and it's outrageous how long some of these firms take to pay up, but that's a private beat. I'm very tempted to name them, but I probably shouldn't. But now they can't book without paying in advance now. They're the only firm that we do that to. Anyway, Lindsay, last but certainly not least, is another law firm with purpose.
Got to put my glasses on. So thank you very much. I'm Lindsay Healey. I'm the founder of Aria Grace. We are a 3-year-old law firm. Interesting, when we listen to the various different sort of groups that I've discussed today, you can see there's a whole range of where people are coming from when it comes to law, from the VC guys who are huge or are able to inject vast amounts of cash into organizations to give them rapid growth, through to the Bates Wells sort of approach, which is bottom up, a B Corp approach. And incidentally, B Corp is an extraordinarily difficult thing to go through. It's a long, hard process. We started ours in August last year, 2020, and we're still going through the verification process. So anyone doing it, take a deep breath, because it's a big fish. When I started up Aria Grace 3 years ago, I was looking at things like ethics in comparable law firms around, and in the big city firms. I had a city law background, and per Martin's point, there was a lot of talk about ethics. There was a lot of talk about corporate social responsibility, and there was a lot of tick boxing, and there was a lot of talk about equality and equal treatment of women, and the gender pay gap shrinking. And in fact, all we've seen actually is a lot of those sorts of things expanding and becoming bigger and becoming less ethical and less about trying to do the ESG world before ESG became the latest sort of trend word. And it became more about profit and how do you keep driving profit at the expense of all other things. And perhaps you can see that very recently as time marches on, and very, very recently we see things like newly qualified solicitors in US law firms. They're being paid £140,000 as a newly qualified. We saw one today, Reed Smith, and they announced £132,000 for newly qualified, so long as they bill over 2,000 hours. So that's a hell of a lot of billing if you're going to go and achieve that. So you're sacrificing a huge chunk. But these law firms also work on the basis of 25% distribution. So the person who's earning their £135,000 is contributing £500,000, £600,000, £700,000 to the law firm. But if you do the maths and you break some of these numbers down, those 2,000 hours, work for £132,000 works out at £66 an hour for those 8.5-hour billables a day. But they're in the office for longer, 15, 16 hours a day. So actually it's working out around about £32 an hour. And then when you pay your tax on top of that, you're probably not getting terribly much more than 18, 19 pounds an hour. Meanwhile, the law firms are making quite a lot of money. So I was looking at that model and I was thinking, well, it didn't really sort of from the ESG side of things, and I'm very much on the S of ESG, so it's very difficult to define what social element of it is, but here's what we tried to come up with. So looking at ethics, we were wondering whether it's a real blah, 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 and we became, my moment became a little bit more of Greta before Greta was Greta. And by that I mean is that, we wanted to consign to the dark passages of time some of the traditional law firm models in favor of doing things in a little bit more of a more balanced way, where people are earning and you're distributing cash in a better way. I had the privilege of speaking here a couple of years ago, actually, and we were talking about innovation, and it was a really, really interesting conversation because there was lots of innovators in the room, but they were all talking about technological innovation, and we were talking about social innovation. And social innovation is such the slow mover when you compare it with technological stuff. So everyone knows about Bit, and everyone knows about Facebook, and everyone knows about all the latest. The internet's not even that old either. But if you take a look at things like the suffragettes, that's 120, 130 years old. Rosa Parks, 70, Equal Pay Act, 50, 60 nearly. And those innovations aren't catching up with anything else in line with the technological stuff. So we thought it would be a good idea to try and restructure a law firm that enabled something that we could give back into societal basis. And so when we took a look at the structure of your traditional model law firms, they're very much pyramidal basis. So the people at the top, in a very feudal sort of way, are being paid for by the people at the bottom, which we kind of like to call the Porsches and divorces, are being paid for by the junior people for the senior equity. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of these traditional law firms do some really good stuff, and a lot of them don't, but the spread of wealth isn't necessarily coming through in the way that it could do. And we're very, very aware, obviously, of the social and the financial apartheid which is happening in the world, which is obviously the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and it's not in sort of financial terms, but it's in real terms as well. So we decided to do something a little bit different. We decided to go and do and create a law firm using ethics, but no blah. And then what that actually meant was, and there's a bit of a sort of a steal on this, is that we're a corporate law firm. So that's all we do. We do corporate law, commercial, privacy, employment, those sorts of areas. And we give back. So it's a very B Corp process where we're matching purpose and profits. But the two things that we do are, on the one side, is we borrow from the traditional firms. We are all about legal excellence, as every law firm should be, obviously. But then the rest of it is about trying to do something completely different. So we were based on diversity and equality and inclusion from the get-go, and that's kind of easy because we didn't have to retro-bake it into our organization. We're about transparency, so Martin's point about transparency is absolutely fundamental. If you can't be transparent, you're not really doing it, which is why I have a problem with a lot of the law firms that don't tell you about the female partners versus the male partners because they're not technically employees. So really get to see in behind whether people are living their values or not. We're remote. We work on client site. We work at home. We work in groups like the Conduit Club or places like that where we can. So we keep all of our environmental aspects very, very low. So we scored an A in the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Circulytics, which is about how to make sure that you are driving out carbon and how you're recirculating products in society and so on. But fundamentally, the big thing that we do to change the way is we pay our lawyers 90% of the fees. And that's a big game change, actually, because it enables us to attract extremely talented lawyers. So we've got lawyers that have come in, partners from Allen & Overy, partners from Dwayne Morris, the head of EMEA from Dwayne Morris from the employment side has just come over to us. And we're getting more and more people who are very interested, not just in the 90%, but that's a very, very big incentive. It's 20% more than our nearest competitors, or 15% in the case of some. But it enables people to go and do things with their cash. So as we know, the trickle-down economy never really worked. It was all about trickle-up, and that's how Amazon and all those great big organizations make the money. This is actually proper trickle-down, because if you spread the wealth across a lot of people, actually it goes into different pots in different places across the economy, which will help drive some of that spend back up. We do look after the environment, as I've already spoken about, but ultimately then what we're left with by the time that we're running the firm, we run the firm based on about 5% of profits at the moment, or 5% of revenue, at the moment, which means that we've got around about 5% or 6% of our revenue to give to charities. And last year, in our very first year, we gave £25,000 to charity. This year, I'd set out at the start of this year a target of 200, and we're going to beat that, so it's going to be around about 215, thereabouts. And I also, rather sillily at the start of the year, said, if we make 200k this year to charities like Great Ormond Street and Alzheimer's and Alexandra Wiley Tower Foundation and Noah's Ark and some of those really, really core charities that need proper money and support, then I said if we can make that money, then we'll make 2 million next year, which is a big punchy ask, but who knows, we can probably do it. So, I mean, the point about it isn't about bashing any other traditional models. They are really good in many, many ways. They provide foundations for training and young lawyers and coming up through the ages. Some really, really, really positive things that they do. We just offer an alternative way of providing a service, so we are able to go and deliver great value to our clients. If we're billing our clients £300,000 a year in your traditional law firm, you'd probably have to bill something of the order of 600,000 or about £1 million in order to go and have a like for like. If a lawyer is billing £300,000 a year in an Aria Grace, they're getting take-home pay of about £250,000. That's huge. You'd have to bill £1 million in a traditional practice to go and get that. So it's an enormous way of spreading wealth across an organisation and at the same time giving money to charity. That's it.
Right, I'm going to come up here for the last bit. Fascinating stuff. Any questions? Got more? Oh dear, lots more slides you didn't go through here. Right, there we go. Any questions as we head towards the end? There are an awful lot of charters and stuff out there now. How do I choose? I can't do them all. I mean, Martin, you've done really quite a lot of them, but you can't sign up to everything. So, if you are committed to these things, but you kind of don't know where to start, how do you start?
I think it's hard. I think you're right, trying to find the right one for you. I think Florence is right. I think the Good Business Charter is a good place to start, because that deals with across the board. And then you have to be genuinely interested in doing this. It has to be for the right reasons. You want to be using your business to do good. I think to get one just for for the badge, for the website, it's just not a good place to start, because you won't have the backing and you will be seen as not authentic. So I think starting small is a good idea, and I think the Good Business Charter is a really good place to start.
Lindsay and Florence had it easy in that they were startups, so they could inculcate that culture from the start.
Yeah.
How do you go about, well, maybe you didn't have to change your culture, but you had to just change and bring people along to make some fairly significant changes, if only to the partnership deed?
It does, and you do need all of your partners, and that's why for larger organisations who've been in a long time, it's harder, because it's harder to convince everybody that this is a good idea. I think it has to be led from the top. The person leading, or the people leading the organisation have to lead this and have to be actually behind it. You can't hand it to your head of BD or your head of marketing or whatever it is and say, get on with this and find it's the right thing to do. It has to be something that the top have to be interested in and have to lead and have to encourage the others to follow them.
Lindsay, where does kind of traditional pro bono fit into this as well? So, well, I pick on you because I know you've been involved in the post office scandal to some extent.
So we do an awful lot of pro bono. So as you know, we were involved with the High Court, or the Court of Criminal Appeal, for 3 of the people who got roughshod by the post office in the post office scandal. We were the organisation that we spent hundreds of thousands of pro bono hours doing it for a relatively small firm. We were the organisation that got Limb 2 of that Court of Criminal Appeal done, which was, it was unconscionable by the post office to have brought those proceedings in the first place, which of itself enabled all of those people, all those 555 victims in the first phase and much more, gave them an opportunity of having some sort of financial return for the pain and suffering that they were put through. And we do an awful lot of that sort of stuff. We fight against all the big guys, fought against Regis and some of the bad things they were doing to SMEs during the pandemic, and we work with a lot of charities because it's just a really nice thing to do. We don't have billable hours, we don't have any demands on anything. Everything's totally pure flexibility, and it's up to what people want to do and how they want to do it, which enables us to do that. We just, as you say, we bake that in from the get-go, and it doesn't become problematic or challenging to do.
Where does pro bono fit for you, Florence?
So my starting point is that I've had a career as a pro bono lawyer for a while before I set up Bellevue Law, and I would say the difference between pro bono and other ESG initiatives is only lawyers can do pro bono legal work, and it's a professional obligation that you do it because nobody else can do it for you. So the other things are important.
So a little bit closer, or speak a bit louder.
I've just said such saintly things only to myself. I was saying in fact, we were talking earlier about the approach of American lawyers where they don't have the history of legal aid, and we now have a decimated legal aid system. If you're a lawyer, you've got skills that there are people need desperately who can't afford to pay for them, and nobody else can do that apart from the lawyers. So it's a fundamental part of being a professional that you would take part in pro bono work of some sort. My personal view is it's no substitute for a properly funded legal aid system, and city firms doing housing law is a sign of a broken system. Good intentions by the city lawyers, but it would be better for people who need housing lawyers to have actual housing lawyers to do that for them. But it's a fundamental part of your professional responsibility if you've got skills, if you've got the privilege of a professional qualification. It's a fundamental part of being a professional. That's what sets you apart from as a professional, is that you will use those for the public good.
So how do you build that formally into the way you operate? Yeah?
Well, our lawyers don't have any charge lawyer targets, so it's completely a matter for them, but we do tend to hire people who align with our values, and I've done a lot of pro bono work while running the firm, and a lot of my lawyers do the pro bono work that suits them.
Martin, do you have billable targets?
No, not anymore. We got rid of those about 3 years ago.
So are these part of the evil, or part of the a major part of the problem? Lindsay, you clearly think they are.
I think they are, yeah. I mean, I think it's very difficult to because you get compared to all the other firms, and the example of 2,000 billable hours, quite frankly, is just astounding. I can't believe that it's possible.
A little bit.
The idea that people can have a work-life balance when they're being expected to do that is just unbelievable. But I mean, that's the price you pay, I suppose. I think just for caring about your employees or about your people, then billable hours are unnecessary evil.
Lindsay, do you have anything particular to add to that? You clearly can't stand them.
Billable hours don't serve anybody. They certainly don't, benefit employees. We have billable hours. Everyone in Aria Grace Law is a partner, so you can choose how you work and what you work. But billable hours for employees is just a rod to crack and profiteer out of an individual. It doesn't really serve the clients well, it doesn't serve the lawyers well, it doesn't serve anyone, it doesn't help balance work, life, it doesn't do anything on that front. There are much better ways of doing lots of business with clients, like productized services, and you can do lots of those sorts of things in a very different way, rather than ratcheting up.
Any questions? I'm thinking of letting you out 5 minutes early, but any last questions? Yes.
No, Neil, I was only going to ask, I'm assuming I know the answer, this is inspiration, by the way. You can choose your suppliers and your clients around it, but I assume, from a recruitment perspective, whether it's consultants or it's employees or it's actual partners, whatever it might be, it's part of your recruitment process. It's massively, you are looking for people that are aligned with your values, as Florence just said, right, in everything you do.
Yeah, pretty much.
They're probably, because you must have an element, Lindsay, when you're offering much higher than the market rate for your kind of firm, than 90%. Do you not just have people coming to you because they want to keep 90% rather than 75%? How do you weed those out, if you like?
It's impossible to look at something on a CV level or those sorts of things, but you generally ask the right questions about views, ethics, ethos, mindset, philosophy, skill set, tool set, all those sort of things that they want to do. You have those conversations. We very rarely have people coming to us and say, we want to join just for the 90%. They like to do things, in line with those. Yeah, but in many ways, sometimes I don't really care too much, so long as they're trying to do the right thing and work in the right steps. I mean, I'm becoming a bit like the Bob Geldof of corporate law. Just give me your money for me charities. I mean, it's kind of like I'm happy to do it as well, but you've got to be on that sort of line. To Florence's point, you've got to have a good business charter in your own head in order to go do these. Otherwise, you're just going to fly in the face of what we do and how we do it.
I think one of the fascinating things that this has crystallised, but we've heard throughout the day from all our speakers, it's people first. It's not clients first, it's people first. And that drives the business. Unless there are any last points, I am going to draw us to a close. One hint, when I was talking earlier about the late payment, one thing it's quite difficult maybe for you to do, but I found very effective, is to send press inquiries and say, we've been having all these problems. I'm working on a story about the financial problems you seem to be having. And I've genuinely done that, and it works, I can assure you. You get paid the same day, generally. Just to round up that, I think I've really enjoyed today, actually. I'm annoyed that partly because of COVID, there were more people in the room. Obviously, there were quite a lot of people watching online as well. That we've had so many great people today, and I'm feeling very encouraged for the future. And obviously, we're in a bit of a bubble here because we all you're here because you believe in this kind of stuff, and the vast majority out there don't, or they're not even thinking about it. But I feel very encouraged. I feel quite excited by some of the people, or pretty much everyone we've heard from today, and I'm feeling inspired, particularly by this last session, but actually throughout the day for the positive, exciting, forward-thinking that we've heard that is slowly and will eventually shake up a fusty old profession that is ultimately a service profession, often forgotten by lawyers. It's legal services they're providing. So I'm feeling inspired. I hope you are too. And I hope we'll see you again this time next year. Thank you.